It's the top of the hour on my clock, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Mandy Goodset, and I'll be the moderator for this session titled From Skepticism to Synergy, Guiding Faculty and Students in AI Adoption. Before we begin, just a few reminders. So we do have a code of conduct that we will adhere to for this conference. And I'm going to post the link to that in the chat right now. And if you experience any issues related to conduct or just in general, please contact us via the email that I will also put in the chat. So it's galeconferencesupport@googlegroups.com. Please be sure that your microphone is muted unless you have a comment to contribute. During the Q&A, please wait until you're invited to unmute before asking your question or making your comment. Although Matt has made it clear, like, making verbal comments or questions are totally fine. And please feel free to use the chat for questions. And as we go along, I'm going to stop Matt and we'll try to answer them in real time. Just so you know, the session is being recorded. You can enable captions by clicking on the Show Captions button at the bottom of your screen. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Mathew Miles, Systems Librarian at McKay Library / BYU Idaho. Matt Miles has worked at the BYU Idaho McKay Library for 29 years as a systems librarian. He is a member of the Campus AI Committee and is active in teaching faculty and students appropriate and effective generative AI use. Please join me in welcoming Matt.
Well, thank you everyone for being here today. And as Mandy said, I'm glad for any of you to interrupt me at any point and ask a question. You can unmute your microphone. I welcome open discussion. So please feel free to do that. And if you want to actually try something in the AI that maybe something that I bring up, I'm glad to do that in real time as well. And let me start by saying that there's a lot of different perspectives on AI and education. If you're familiar with John Warner at all, he's said a lot about generative AI and writing, and he talks a lot about writing and how we don't teach writing. We're too formulaic, and we force people into boxes, students, and so we take the joy out of writing. But he said if ChatGPT can do it, it's not worth doing. And sometimes this is misinterpreted. I think what he's saying is that we need to remake our assignments. I just kind of organically started getting into working with faculty, teaching them how to start implementing generative AI into their assignments. And and some of the faculty were very open to this. And one faculty member, I made a presentation about what generative AI could do, and he said, the students could use generative AI to complete every single one of my assignments. And so what that meant for him, he was being honest about it, he had to change the way that he was teaching to get to higher level learning. And we'll go into some of those strategies during the presentation. And Salcon, technology can be a great equalizer, providing students from all backgrounds with access to high quality educational opportunities. I'm sure a lot of you follow Ethan Mollick from the Wharton Business School, who's kind of at the forefront of teaching how to use generative AI in education. And what he's said is that, of course, the chat is not as good as if I have a live person here teaching me about physics or tutoring me about biology. But if I'm in a place where I don't have a tutor at all, the chat's pretty good. It's on about any subject. And a lot of people around the world, they don't have access to tutors or people that can help them. And the chat can do a pretty good job at that role. So the challenge is finding the balance between AI assistance and meaningful learning experiences. Now, one faculty member that, before I get into this next slide here, I work with a faculty member in exercise science, And we were kind of going through this, and he said, you know what, I get it. He said, there's this core knowledge that my students need to be able to have without any type of technology. And he calls that pocket knowledge. And he said, any other thing that I'm teaching them that they can speed up or do better with AI, I'm glad to have them do that. So what he does is the pocket knowledge that he has identified, he assesses that in the classroom with, without technology. So his other assignments have changed. So he's built it into the assignments to use the AI to accelerate what they're doing, but then, and they can use the AI to prepare for any of the assessments, but he's very much delineated between what they have to know without any type of assistive technology. So what's AI's role in librarians' role in education? Well, we really should be at the forefront of this because it's just an extension of information literacy. And with any student that comes to talk to me, I immediately get them into using generative AI. We'll start with topic generation for papers. We'll create outlines and thesis statements. I'm sure you've all done this. And then we'll go do the searching with the AI generated terms, and then we create a notebook LM with all the documents that they have. Again, feel free to interrupt, or if there's any questions. All right, so when I do an AI orientation, what I try to do is first always explain, just on a very basic level, how do these LLMs work? And the example that I use is I'll tell them, these large language models are kind of like your brain. Your brain has all of these neurons, and there's connections in the brain, the synapses, and people with more connections in the brain have higher intelligence because they can create abstractions at a deeper level. And so I said, what these LLMs do is they ingest all of these documents and create word associations. And so there's all these connections between words. And then I'll use this example. I'll say, and this may be an example that many of you have used. I'll just use a nursery rhyme. I'll say to them, if I say, uh, the cow jumped over and they'll say moon, and the dish ran away with and they'll say spoon. I'll say, well, we have some international students here. Maybe they didn't know that. I said, well, that's basically how these models work. You have some background, you have some information in your brain, and so based on the input that I gave you, you were able to output predictive text. And you can use, there's any variety of examples that you can use. And I always encourage you to try to make this connection. Then they're like, oh yeah, okay, I kind of get that. And then we talk about how, there's bias in the documents and incorrect things in the documents that these LLMs ingest. And so you need to be aware of those things. So going on, this is a very basic thing that I do with almost every student. They'll come in, I'm a freshman English student. I need to write a paper on sports and society. Okay. And they'll say, well, that's kind of broad. I say, let's use the AI as a brainstorming tool and say, give me 8 possible focused topics on the subject. And so we'll do something like this. Let's see if I can actually switch between. Can you see my screen okay? And I
Yep.
always use, yes, you can see the screen?
Yep, we see perplexity right now.
Yeah, so I always have them start with perplexity because it gives you all the sources that it's using in footnotes them. So you say, I am a college freshman. We talk about context. They have to say who they are. And need to write a paper on sports. Whoops. Sports and society. Give me 8 more focused topics on this subject. All right, and then we let the AI do its thing. Oh, the role of sports in fostering social cohesion and community development, gender equality and representation in sports, etc. Youth sports and socialization. So what we've done is right away, they start to think about things that they haven't thought about. Plus, when we get to the actual searching, they can say, hey, I'm just going to search on this because it uses the terms that the literature uses. And then we'll do something like, all right, I want to focus on 2, 3, and 4. I want to focus on 2, 3, 4. Please generate 3 possible outlines I could use to write a, small paper. Well, let's say a 4-page paper. And then we talk about, well, why did I not say the best outline? And then we start to talk about the concept of this is all subjective. There is no best outline. But by generating 3 outlines instead of 1, I have more ideas to choose from. And sometimes, especially with the international students, they just have this sense of relief because they use this outline and they actually just copy this into their Word document and they just say, okay, I'm going to write about this, I'm going to write about this. And you can see here it also gave us a thesis. Just a general, you've probably all done something similar, but just I do that with every single student. I start with the AI. And then, of course, we load those into Notebook LM, and I show them how to generate, uh, outlines in there to query those documents. And again, these are things that I do with the actual in the orientations. All right, so why is this so important? Well, because a lot of people are struggling with this and they're just looking for some help. And the best way that I know of to get students to use library resources is through faculty engagement. Because when the faculty engage with you, they start inviting you to class. They start using the resources of the library more. They start using your expertise. I spend more time doing AI orientations for classes than I do basic library research. I combine the two, but sometimes I get asked to just talk about using generative AI for some specific use case. All right. So you have to establish AI confidence, and that's how I got invited to be on the AI campus committee. So they said, hey, we know you've been doing this. We want your help in guiding policy. And so that's happened. And the other thing that I do is I track what's going on with generative AI. And on our campus, we have a Microsoft Teams site. And almost every day I post a list of resources or articles that are new that have to do with generative AI in education. Then I really like to focus on the use cases. So I'll talk to them and just say, they say, I don't know where to start. I know I'm supposed to be doing this. What do I do? And I said, let's just start with one. Let's just take one assignment. You don't have to do it all at once. Let's just start with one assignment. And sometimes what we find is that the AI works really good on that assignment. And sometimes we find it didn't work that well. So I want to just briefly play this video because sometimes we get all caught up in the technology, but then if I can get to the right screen here. And this is called Old Inventions That Never Caught On. Thanks. Okay, you get the idea. There's 3 minutes of these. Looks like we have a question here. Are research skills pocket knowledge? I would say yes. And but the research skills, as in almost other people can comment on this, and if you want to unmute, but especially in the age of disinformation, um, the I think the AI literacy kind of dovetails nicely with information literacy. And part of that's critical thinking skills. Okay, how do you engage with faculty who vehemently oppose the introduction of AI in the classroom or its use in assignments? Uh, there's nothing you can do for them, right? So I look for people that are trying to, they want help, or maybe they're slightly resistive, but they're willing to, do whatever. Um, so I don't really try to break into the people that they just don't want to do it, because over time it's just like the internet. Oh, you can't use the internet on this assignment. Well, how did that work out? Okay. Uh, okay, so Peter Morse, doesn't knowing how to get from assignment to a topic to an outline count as pocket knowledge? That's definitely open for discussion. And so at the end, we can unmute everyone and we can talk about this. Uh, I don't claim to have like all the answers. I'm just kind of throwing out some things there that I've done, and there's some observations. So like if you felt like that was something that they needed to do and you were a professor, you could say, all right, um, you're going to come into class and you're going to generate a topic outline on a piece of paper and hand it in. So I don't know that I'm the one to say what's pocket knowledge for a particular discipline. I think the professors have to decide that, and then they have to assess it in that way. All right, really good question. And like I say, I don't claim to have the answers to all these. I just have ideas. Okay, one thing that also I find helps with students and faculty with generative AI is helping them understand it doesn't work like traditional programs. So for example, a calculator is a traditional program. 2 plus 3 will always give the answer of 5. Well, with the generative AI, you're never going to get the same answer twice with the exact same prompt. It'll be similar, but there'll always be variances in that. Let's see here. How do you critically think without going through the tedium of brainstorming, searching, reading, deciding between sources? How do you critically think? But okay, uh, good question. We'll open that up at the end, and we'll just talk about it. Um, I think here's the principle that I think about with my students. They're going to have to go out and do jobs where, let's say some guy is creating widgets and he creates one widget a day with whatever processes he's using. And this guy gets really good at using generative AI, and now he's creating three widgets a day. Well, his employer doesn't really care what skills he used to create those three widgets, as long as it's legal, right? And so the new standard is three widgets, not one. And so that's the way I think about this. There are tasks that I used to do with AI. Well, I'll give you an example. When I was in high school, I worked for this guy that had a typewriter company. I used to clean his. He was the best typewriter cleaner. He had people bringing their typewriters, school districts. Uh, that typewriter cleaning business obviously doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't matter how good he was at it. Okay, so we just good questions. Like I said, you'll get different answers every time. And for example, I've got like 40 or 50 generative AI videos for different use cases, and I asked 3 different generative AI engines to categorize my videos, and they all did it differently. So that surprised me quite a bit because they weren't even close, the names that they gave them. So let's talk about a little bit about policy. And this is not unique to us. Other people are doing something similar, but we have this stoplight framework. And I can't say that all the faculty have adopted this, but we've really encouraged it. You can't just have an AI policy for the class. If you really want to be effective, you have to tell the students the AI policy for every assignment because they're confused. They don't know when they can use it. They don't know when they shouldn't use it. And so um, it relieves a lot of anxiety if you say, okay, on this assignment, let's say it's a pocket knowledge assignment, you can say, you can't use the AI at all because it interferes with what you need to be able to learn to do. The second is yellow, where on this assignment we say, um, you can use the AI in the way that we have instructed you to use it. So, like, let's say it's a writing assignment, and you can say, hey, on this writing assignment, you can use it for brainstorming, creating outlines, but then I don't want you to, you can't use it to write a paragraph. You can write your own paragraph and then have it correct that. And then green is you can use the AI on this assignment however you want, but you just have to tell me exactly, you just have to tell me what you did. Share with me your chat thread. Okay. And what I found is that the most forward thinking faculty have figured out that on most assignments, you want to get right to green. And so what that does, it completely flips the classroom around. So we have a couple guys in our bios department who are always trying stuff. And what they've figured out is that because of generative AI is really pretty good and pretty accurate with the hard sciences, you know, the students can use the generative AI for any concept that they teach in class. And so what they're doing is they're teaching the students how to use the AI to create their own textbook. And they're teaching them how to use the AI to generate assessments for themselves on these concepts. Then, as we discussed, they come to class and they're assessed without the technology. They've struggled with having another area they've struggled with is they have these case studies. And they see the students can do our case studies with the AI, just like that. And then people that have already done it will post how they use the generative AI to create the use cases. And I said, why don't you have them create their own use cases? Oh yeah. So what they're doing is the students have to create their own use cases, and then they have to generate their own assessments, and they have to do a presentation on their use cases. So it really is. I know it's making a lot of people uncomfortable, and I know we're going to make some mistakes, but I think it's better to push the boundaries, fail early and often, find out where the problems are. Just like the guys with the, the beard coverings. They tried it, didn't catch on. Okay, let's see. What do we got here? There's some good comments in here. We can talk about it in open session. Let's see how much time we have left. Okay. All right, so I talked about this earlier, identifying the core knowledge. Students must retain, consider AI for everything else. And I'm repeating myself, but implementing AI for brainstorming, outlining, topic narrowing, and document analysis. Use AI for thesis generation and writing assistance. And I went out and asked a bunch of faculty members, how are you using AI? And I can share this document, but oops, I have an extra page. But it's just kind of I can't remember how we're in here. They explain how they used it, not just for in the classroom, but how they use it to generate curriculum. Here's just one. I've used AI in the format of my presentations and helped create case scenarios for some of my practicum lessons. This is for physical therapy system. Both are time consuming, but this has significantly improved my inefficiency. So this is part of it. If you can get to faculty and say, hey, I can help you use the generative AI to speed up your generation of course content. Let's find one that's not, okay, let's see. This one is also about assessment. Oh, here's one. Uh, well, that's going to take too much time, but I'll share that with you. You can read through it. All right, AI and curriculum development, that's what we're talking about now. Syllabus creation is a big one. Assessment tools. Okay, there's no reason you can, if a lot of you probably use Canvas, you can use the AI to create rubrics and import those directly into Canvas. You don't have to like recreate them after you create the rubric. And I've got some videos on how to do this, but it's not that difficult. Um, they're generating images using ImageFX now with the if you have the paid version of ChatGPT, the Dolly image generation is really good. Uh, so some people like if you're in the health sciences, you got so many kids asking you to generate a letter of recommendation. And so what they're doing is they have a form. If a student asks them to write a letter of recommendation to get into medical school, they have a form that they give the student to fill out. Okay, tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about that. Okay, and then the student gives them that information, and then they've created a pretty detailed prompt that takes that information and generates a letter of recommendation, which then they then go tweak. Well, people say, that's that's probably not. Might have some questions about that, but if you've got to write 30 of these in a semester, you don't have time to sit down and write each one from scratch. Okay, so, and some people might say, well, I would write mine from scratch. Well, you probably haven't had to do 30 in a semester. All right, student and faculty research for publications. Really good. If you've not used the AI enabled specific research tools like Research Rabbit, which is probably the most difficult but most advanced. I use Consensus quite a bit. If you haven't used Consensus, you can ask it a yes no question and it will give you a percentage of the scientific literature that says yes, no, or maybe. Okay, elicit's really good. You can create columns of documents and say, hey, show me all of the research methods for each of these, give me a summary of them all, tell me what kind of study it is. And so you can create these columnar formats of all these different articles. And of course, Semantic Scholar is a research enabled, I'm sorry, AI enabled research tool, which I use too. And the new deep research options, if you're following, there's a guy, I can't remember his first name, Stapleton in the UK, and I've got some videos on this, but the new deep research options, you can generate an entire first draft of a research paper in Gemini. You can do the same thing with DeepSeek or with Grok. And so people are struggling with this. It's kind of people's minds or brains are blowing up and things, but it works really good. If you know how to prompt it, you can get a very good first draft of a research paper. At least do the literature review. And there'll still be some hallucinations in the sources. But of course, you have to go through and you have to clean things up. You have to check for sources. And then, of course, the engines don't have access to all of the research, right? But it does speed up the process. And I think that it's already happening. People are using this to generate first drafts of papers. Um, of course, there's all kinds of ways you can cheat at that point, and there are many examples. I don't need to go into them. But if you do it in an appropriate way, um, unless you've been specifically told not to do it that way, it's very efficient. Okay. I think most of you are probably familiar with Notebook LM. I have all the students that I work with research put all their documents into Notebook LM. And And data analysis, if you've not used Julius AI, it is unbelievably good. So you can take, if you have some data and in a spreadsheet, you can upload it to Julius AI and you can ask it to run a correlation test between, say, hey, this column, this column, I need you to run a correlation test. Or if you're kind of rusty on your statistics, you can have it look at the data and say, I want you to look at this data and I want to do some statistical analysis between column A and column B. What statistical test would be appropriate to run? And it'll say, oh, well, you could run an ANOVA or you could run a t-test, and then it will run the test for you and it will give you data visualizations. Um, One thing that the biology department, they had a student doing a capstone report, and it was on sickle cell disease in the United States. And the problem was that states don't collect the information in the same way, and some don't collect it at all. There's federal information, federal information that's published. There wasn't a good way to put all this together, so we used Chat GP Pro to combine unstructured data along with structured data, and then to fill in the gaps where it didn't have data and make predictions to give just a ballpark overview of sickle cell disease. And so, obviously, again, like I said, it had to kind of, make some assumptions, but we knew that it was making assumptions and it gave us a ballpark idea of sickle cell disease incidence by state. All right. Challenges in AI implementation, the ethical concerns, of course, the privacy. I see things all the time that these um, different different information providers are suing the companies that make these LLMs, saying we didn't say you could use it for that. So I think over time that some of the things, some of the data that's been provided to these engines is going to have to be removed. We've talked about bias and uh, um, just plain incorrect information. There's legal considerations, a lot having to do with intellectual property that we're going to be grappling with, and also it keeps changing. The evolution is going to create. We need to be at the forefront instead of resisting it. We need to jump in and figure out how is this going to work? How can we make it work with what we currently do? I had an interesting discussion with EBSCO the other day. I've talked to them a little bit about generative AI in their products. I've talked to Clarivate. They've reached out to me. And I think sometimes as librarians, we forget that there's a lot of places that people can go for information. And with these generative AI engines, the competition is even greater. And when I was with the new EDS interface, in our current EDS implementation, we've implemented pull requests so faculty can have books and other things delivered to their office. Well, guess what? We do it for students too. So students can generate a pull request to have, we'll go out and pull all the books, even though we have open stacks, we'll pull all the books for them that they request and bring them to the circulation desk, and they just have to come to pick them up. And we have thousands of these a semester. And people say, well, they're supposed to learn how to use the call number system and find them themselves. Like, you know what? Most businesses don't lecture their their customers on what they need. Okay. So we try to provide services that people want. And excuse me, the latest version of EDS that they're trying to force us to go, we can't run this implementation. I said, look, people are going to the library. Of course, they need the catalog for the books, but EDS, they're going there less and less to get scholarly information because for a long time they could use Google Scholar. Now they can use Consensus, they can use Elicit, they can use any of the generative AI engines to do these kinds of searches. I said, the pull requests help us keep them in the interface. So, and I think they started to get it, but we can't think in traditional ways. Now here's a good one. Gamma is for talks about uh, creating slides. I created this. If you look down in the lower right hand corner, I created this slide presentation using Gamma. So excellent. How prone to hallucinations is Julius AI? It does make mistakes, but it's pretty good. So like you have to know a little bit of statistics because sometimes it might run the wrong test. Okay. But just by loading your data into Julius, it'll start looking at it and give you visualization. So like you could say, all right, take column A and generate a histogram from column A, and it does a pretty good job. Let me go back up to it. Okay, some of the other people comment on Research Rabbit. Okay, we've got 10 minutes left. What do you want to talk about? You can unmute.
I don't know if folks can unmute, but if you either raise your hand or put it in the chat, I think I can unmute you if you'd like to say something.
I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute. Okay, okay, so I'm going to put a copy of the use cases in from the faculty in the chat. Let me paste that in. And then I'm also going to paste in this presentation. Let's do that. I've got a PDF of that. And then here are some videos I've created for different use cases, which are open to anyone. And you're free to reach out to me if you have a specific question about a use case you might be grappling with. Um, let's see. Oops, sorry, I got to decline that. Anyone want to unmute and Peter?
Let me.
Can we,
I don't know if you can unmute yourself, so let me unmute you, Peter. 1 second.
yeah, can you unmute him?
Go for it.
There. Can you
Hi,
hear me?
Peter.
Hi.
Yeah.
I just wanted to take back my earlier comments after thinking a little further on this. So I was complaining that the student was losing a learning opportunity by having the outline generated for them. And on further thought, we're talking about a first-year student here, and this gives them a chance to, a sort of accelerated chance to see the whole process of writing the paper. And now I'm willing to say, yeah, that's good. They will learn something from that. I hope they'll get a chance to apply that
Right.
in a later year and do their own outline and so on. If they never get to that point, we've let them down. But if we give them, we've got a new way to let them learn from a high altitude and zoom in that we didn't really have before. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point. You know, all these things are contextual, aren't they? What might be appropriate in one situation isn't in another. And sometimes I'll do something like, and then afterwards I'm like, in that context, maybe that wasn't the best time to do that. Is that kind of what I
Yeah,
kind of, yeah.
yeah,
I,
absolutely.
yeah. And so I think the other thing is we can't be afraid to make some mistakes and push the envelope a little bit. So I have faculty that sometimes we'll try, we have an idea for an assignment and we'll implement it in an assignment and the students will do the assignment and they're like, oh, the facts, I didn't expect that they would do that. Okay, well, let's tweak a little bit. So the first time we do it, yeah, things can go bad, right? But then we see, oh, well, they reacted this way, so let's change it like this. And then the next semester, it just gets a little bit better. And so the faculty members have to be willing to be kind of lenient on the grading, right? Uh, if the assignment didn't turn out kind of how they hoped, or the students didn't respond to it in the way that they thought, they have to be willing to, be flexible on the grading. And that's why I say don't try to do your whole course at once. Let's just start with one assignment and then we can do another assignment anyway. Very good, Peter. Anything else you want to add?
That someone someday is going to write a great oral history of the early days of AI in academia.
Right. Yep. It's the Wild West. All right. Anyone else have comment they'd like to make, or we have 5 minutes left? I would also encourage you to, if anyone has ideas or use cases that they've done, to please share them with the group. I've shared the things that I've created, but I always find that people think of things that I haven't, and they've thought of, better ways to tackle certain problems. Okay, what percentage of higher education institutions do you think have created an institutional AI policy? That's a good question. I don't know what that is, but the issue with this, if you want to be successful, you have to have executive buy-in. So we have some faculty members still say, you can't use it in this class, and if you do, you're cheating. Well, our president has come out and said, publicly, you need to engage the students with the AI, because if you give that to them, they will have a competitive advantage when they get into the workforce. And I was talking to a faculty member in health science. Maybe I could just give you a little more background. The way that I have been able to engage faculty, first of all, I've been here a long time, and it's given me a chance to get to know people. But the departments that I'm responsible for, I walk through those departments every day. And I just ask them, hey, how's it going? What do you need? What can I help you with? And a lot of times they say, oh, I'm good. Or they might say, you know what? I need help finding this article. Or could you find a book on this? A lot of times they won't reach out to you. They're not going to call you in your office. You have to go into the areas where they are. And then once you start building that relationship, then they start asking you to do more things. But anyway, I was working with a faculty member of public health, and we were talking about this concept of creating this competitive advantage for our students. He said, you know what? I get it. He said, when I graduated, PowerPoint was not, as hasn't proliferated like it has now. And he said, I got really good at PowerPoint. And oh, you got a not found? Let's see. Huh, I copied it right from here. Anyone else getting the not? Let me. Oh, you know what it did?
Yeah, if you click on the link that I posted just above,
Yeah, thank you for doing
Michael,
that.
the one that you posted doesn't work for me either, but the one
Okay.
that I posted did.
Okay, I think I got cut off or something. But you posted a link that would work. Okay. But what I was going to say is, he said, when I got on my first public health job, uh, he said nobody was very good at PowerPoint. And so everybody was asking me to help them with their PowerPoint. And he said that really helped start my career out. Um, and so if we give students good generative AI skills, and as librarians, we should really be at the forefront of this. They're going to have that competitive advantage when they leave here. They're going to be coming out of school, and people in their jobs are going to say, hey, what do you know about generative AI? And so I guess that's where I'm looking with this. I'm trying to give our students a competitive advantage in the workforce. Looks like we have 1 minute left. I really appreciate everyone's input and ideas. And again, I don't claim to have any special insight on this. I'm just sharing what I have. And uh, the last thing I'll say is just to reiterate the point: don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're low stakes, right? We're not doing surgery. We're not trying something out on a patient but again, thank you and good luck to everyone.
Thank you, Matt. Join me in thanking Matt for a great presentation. This was awesome.
Oh, and if you want to, you're free to, if you want to contact me directly, let me just put my email address. If you have any questions, or if you have things that you would like to share, I'd be glad to hear. All right, thanks, Mandy.